Hi, welcome back to another edition in my episode. Today we're going to be cooking the king of curries. We're going to be doing a Vindaloo. So, British Indian restaurant style, so we have some base gravy, about 250, 300 millilitres. Let's start at the top left. We have one bullet chilli. Obviously Vindaloo's pretty spicy. I think it's always a missed opportunity just adding lots of chili powder. It's nice to get a couple of different types of chilies in, you know, really bring through the heat of this dish. We have two quite large green chilies that have been cut diagonally. We have two red dried chilies. Next to that we have some mushrooms and some quite coarsely chopped onions, about two mushrooms and a very small onion, very coarsely chopped. We have a generous handful of mixed green and red peppers. We have some freshly cut coriander, I'd say 2 tablespoons. We have about 3 tablespoons of seasoned oil. I'll post the recipe up for that on the screen as we speak. We have a heaped tablespoon of ginger and garlic paste, the same quantity of lemon juice, sorry, this is lime juice, and doesn't matter whether it's lemon or lime actually. We have some tomato puree that's been diluted with a little bit of water and a touch of tandoori masala. Next to that, about just under a teaspoon of salt. We have about a generous half a teaspoon of kasuri methi, which I like to roast, dry roast in the pan and scrunch up to a fine powder. We have 2 teaspoons of Kashmiri chili powder, about 2/3 of a teaspoon of garam masala, about 2 teaspoons of mixed powder. Again, I'll post my recipe up for mixed powder on the screen as we speak. And we have some mixed vegetables. I couldn't resist the sweet corn. Quite a Vindaloo fan, so up and down the country, and you know, I can't really talk about any Vindaloos I've had out of England, but certainly in England you always get that couple of sweet corns in there, and obviously some potatoes, about 2 very small potatoes chopped up into 4, keep them quite coarse, 1 carrot, and a tablespoon and a half of peas. Those have been parboiled, they're nearly cooked, about 85% cooked. You know, 6 or 7 minutes boiling, a little bit of turmeric and a little bit of salt, as I always do when I boil or pre-prepare vegetables for an Indian dish. And I think I mentioned the seasoned oil, didn't I? Okay, so let's get cooking. So my pan's heating up nicely there. Interesting, because the history of Vindaloo actually is wine and garlic. It's a Portuguese Goan recipe. I spent some time in Goa. I could not find this recipe anywhere, but it's become quite famous in the UK, and most definitely not from people that run restaurants who live in Goa. Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Sri Lankan, Nepalese, they're all cooking a Vindaloo. You know, it's become really famous in England actually. Couldn't find it in Goa. Went to dozens of restaurants, but to be honest, do you really want to go 6,000 miles or 6,500, 7,000 miles and eat something that you'd want to eat in England when you've got all that great food? I can safely say the food in Goa is amazing. All those fresh spices, nothing from a packet. It was just really good. It just felt excellent when I was in Goa. Really a very good trading route. Had really fresh, pungent spices available. Even the restaurants didn't even have refrigeration. It's really good to eat local. You want to avoid the touristy restaurants. It's good to eat local. So every time you'd order something, they'd send a little boy out over to the market to buy the ingredients fresh. So sometimes you have to wait a little bit for your food, but well worth it. Really recommend Goa. So let's add those 2 dried red chilies. Let's give that a swirl. We don't want to burn the methi, although it is quite a robust spice. So let's add the ginger and garlic paste. Let's make sure that's hot. I think that's hot. It's on quite a high heat. Whoops-a-daisy. Double whoops-a-daisy. Okay. Should have used a teaspoon, but it's okay. Right, give that a good stir. Get rid of some of those raw tastes in the garlic and ginger. That's fine. And what are we going to add next? Let's add, actually, the tomato puree. Actually, I'm going to add the tomato puree secondly. I want these mushrooms and onions to fry. So I want to keep it oil based at the moment. If I would have added the tomatoes, then it would have been water based slightly. So we're just going to brown those off and soften them. We don't really need to brown them. So we're going to fry them off, soften them, and we'll come back to that shortly. Okay, so they're frying away. What I'm going to do, I've noticed some of the oils absorbed into the mushrooms. I am going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of rapeseed oil into that. Okay. And my base gravy, as always, is heating up in a saucepan next to the pan, because I like to add it hot. You don't want to reduce the temperature of your dish adding cold base gravy. So what are we going to add next? Let's add our chilies. Now, when you're adding chilies to a dish, obviously I'm cooking for myself, but I won't eat that. I'll probably the smaller green chilies, but always cut them up in such a way that somebody can pull them out of the dish if they don't want to eat them. Okay, so that's you don't really get it in restaurants, because restaurants always play the safe hand really, and they'll just use chili powder. But cooking this dish at home, you can really adapt it to how you want it. So what I do with the bullet chili as well, I grab it and I score the shell of the green chili to emit some of that nice pungent, quite acidic, fresh chili taste. Okay, so now let's add our tomato paste, just a little bit. So those are softened nicely, getting some really mixed great flavours coming from that now. Let's add the salt. This is enough for 2 people, by the way. Let's add our mix powder. Kashmiri chili powder. Now Kashmiri chili powder isn't as hot as regular chili powder, just adds a really nice vibrant red colour to the dish. It's not actually from Kashmir. I don't know how it's got the name really, but it's basically chilies that have been dried, de-seeded and then ground. So obviously when you take the seeds out, the chili powder isn't as hot, and you just get the flesh of the chili, and it's really red. So that's the difference. Red hot chili will have the seeds blended along with it. Okay, so let's add our peppers. I still want a little bit of crunch to the peppers, so I want to turn this on the highest heat possible now, and just very lightly blanch those peppers. I don't want them to soften too much. It's nice to have a little bit of texture. And yeah, another vegetable dish, yes, but obviously if you're a meat lover and you want this dish with meat, subsidise these vegetables for chicken, you know, pre-prepared chicken, lamb, prawns, whatever you want. So let's add our vegetables. Add the veg, and just make sure those vegetables are coated with the spices. The pan's starting to dry slightly on the bottom, so let's work quite quickly here. Looking good. Alright, that's great. Let's add some lemon juice now. When it starts to stick to the bottom of the pan, that's a good sign. You're going to scrape that off as you add moisture to the dish, packed with flavour. So looking really vibrant there. Base gravy on the boil. Let's add about half that. Okay. Give that a stir again. So that's starting to resemble the way I want it. So what we're going to do, let's just focus on that. We're going to boil that down now for about 3 to 4 minutes. I'll be able to tell when it's cooked down enough, when the oil starts to split, and we'll come back to that. So that's been sizzling away now for about 3.5 minutes. Bubbles throughout the dish, shows it's well heated up. Oil started to split. A little bit more base gravy in there. Not too much, that's almost the consistency that I like. And if I can find my spoon, I'll give that a stir. So stir that in and do the same again. Bring it back to the boil, let the oil split. And let's add our garam masala. A little bit of coriander. I'm going to save some of the coriander for garnish. You don't have to put coriander in. In fact, you don't have to follow any of the directions I'm showing. This is the way I do it, and based on years and years of experience, research, travelling, reading, living in Asia. So let's let that boil down and we'll come back to that in a moment. So that's boiled down really nicely. Again, bubbles right throughout the dish. Quite a dark colour, quite a red colour. Everything's great. A range of textures, colours, flavours, and we'll just turn that down to a minimum and let the oil rise to the surface a little bit. I've just given it a shake and we're ready to serve. So let's just serve that. You can take the red chilies out, unless you want to eat them, of course. So I want that bullet chili at the top, so pretty simple, nice and fiery. So let's just add the finishing touches to that. Let's blow some of that smoke away. I'm thinking it's steaming up the camera lens. Let's get a nice close-up on that. And the remainder of the coriander we can put on top. Okay, so there you have it, nice and simple. The king of curries, vegetable madras for two. Hope you've enjoyed the recipe. Feel free to like and subscribe. Let's make sure we got a zoom up on that. Okay, thanks for watching.